do you buy?
That's a good question. Today, I have a good one. Ready for this? All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the half lit room apparently that I'm in. We're excited. We're live. For those of you that are watching, which is 0 people. We're going to be going through some good stuff today. John and I had some good prep conversations before we started the broadcast, and I'm excited about it. Today's episode of Wunntee Weeklies is brought to you by Backpacker Magazine. I literally have never opened one of these before in my life, but I've subscribed to it now. So this is going to make me pine for going other places and doing other
Wait, so
things.
you've got more than one issue there, but you haven't looked at them yet? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, they both showed up on the same day. So I did
Oh, okay.
the Delta Mags for Miles thing, and they send like the month before, and then they start you on the subscription. So I have
Gotcha.
September, October.
Gotcha.
I also have Fast Company, which is I love Fast Company. Is probably my favorite magazine for business stuff.
Yeah, it's a neat magazine.
And then Ink, of course. Although check this out.
Which one of your brothers has been on the cover of?
Yes, my little brother was on the cover of Ink magazine probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
About that. Yeah, it's about that.
And my man T-Rob.
There he is.
On the cover of, this is September. Or no, this is October. This is the current one. I don't know what he's talking about, though. The Persuader. Anyway.
At this point, he could talk about anything he wants.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. It's interesting, actually. Have you watched the interview that he that Frank did with Tony?
I don't know. I watched the video of Frank talking about that, about the work. They actually hired me for a minute to do ghostwriting for a little bit, and nothing ever came of it. It was a certain person there that seemed to have mismanaged anything that I touched.
I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I love Frank. I love what he's doing. I don't really have a lot of love for that person. Not a hate or anything, just things never go smoothly when that person's involved.
This is truth. This is truth. You and I are on the same page as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
Anyway, great magazines. I have a lot to read. I don't have any time to read them, but these will stack up, and then some point I'll just flip through the pictures, and then I'll be good. We have some fun stuff to talk about today. Ross, who is usually is the bringer of all things wisdom and intelligent, is off gallivanting in foreign lands today, so he is absentee.
Enjoying the profits of his wisdom.
Exactly. So I think that John and I are going to try and channel his wisdom with some of the stuff that we have today. We actually are both quite prepared for what we have to talk about today. So as usual, we're going to try and keep this to 30 minutes. We did start a little bit early, but that's fine. We'll end right around noon Pacific time. You're still an hour ahead, right? You're always an hour ahead, right?
Yeah, I'm hearing hailstones hit the window behind me. It's not even supposed to rain today. I don't know if you can see that out there. It's kind of clouds are on the mountains behind me, and
yeah. Well, it's supposed to start getting cooler here, and it was cool for a couple of days, and then it's going to get hot again this week, which is
high of 52 today, I think here.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's not normal. It's below normal for sure. There's snow in the mountains.
Everyone head to Utah for that snow. That Utah ski snow.
And just take it with you when you leave.
Exactly.
I'm already tired of it. I haven't even seen it on the yard yet.
All right, let's get to it. Why don't we go ahead and start? Let's start with, let's have you get us started. John has a couple of things he wants to talk about. I have a couple of things I want to talk about. So we'll get rolling and have some little conversations, and then we'll keep it short and sweet and be
good
and done.
So the inspiration of this was, the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of what I call chunking delivery. And I'll talk about that in a minute, about what that really means. Not chucking, but chunking into pieces. And so I mentioned a couple weeks ago Jake Larson's video training for YouTube advertising. And I haven't started the training yet, so I'm still getting the emails they're trying to get me. And it's completely obvious to me where he got it from. And this is another thing I want to talk about is if you're buying campaigns from somewhere else, modify them. The more popular those campaigns are, the more likely that your users have already seen them. And so like the headlines and that kind of stuff, it's completely obvious to me that he bought Ryan Dice's The Machine. And and I know it well because you can see here I've got my laminated display here that shows the map of it. So it's a good system, but he didn't change it enough. It's I mean, it's the boilerplate headlines and stuff like that. So, and once enough people buy that, you have to change it even more to stand out, so people don't be like, "Hey, I just got the same headline email last week from this other thing I follow."
Right.
So anyway, and then so I've got another client who has, this is back to the chunking delivery thing. That's, Jake's emails kind of inspired me to think about like the delivery and what we're seeing and what we're getting, what we're delivering to our contacts. And one thing I saw in this example is all he's doing is emails. He's using Infusionsoft very well for delivering emails, but he's not tying into any other thing. So at the core, the concept of chunking delivery has to do with basically, if you have a long paragraph, break it up into smaller pieces. Even if your English teacher would not approve, people read things and in a way that kind of like how you're talking to them. So if the content looks overwhelming when they get it, it looks like one big piece, it's going to be, people are much less likely to read that than if it's a bunch of smaller pieces with images and stuff breaking it up. Images can be iffy on email, but the idea of chunking the delivery, breaking up into smaller pieces, breaking up into different kinds of pieces, and then on the larger, more macro scale, breaking it up into direct mail, SMS, email, phone calls. We've got more than just email to reach out to our contacts. And the more expensive the product is, the longer it's going to take to convert them. But you can accelerate that time to convert by reaching out to them on different methods, A phone call is king of all of them. If you can get somebody on the phone and talk to them and provide value one-on-one like that, that's huge. Even if it's just your sales team doing it, that's pretty powerful. And so chunking delivery is, I didn't bring any examples or anything, but hopefully my description.
Examples, actually.
Yeah.
So when I work with Frank is a great example of just about everything because he does everything in all of his marketing. He also is the source of most of those repeated headlines that you hear.
Yeah.
Because that's a side note to speak to that point. For some reason, people think that they can go and they can buy success. And that's not really the way it works. In fact, we would try really hard to help people understand that these are just examples and you have to make it your own. Like I can teach you the strategies, but if you don't do the work, it's not going to happen. It's like if you say, that's like if you're 300 pounds, 6'5", and you go to like the Jackson Winklevoss gym in Albuquerque, and you say, okay, I want to be the welterweight champion of the world in the UFC. How much do I have to pay for that? It's like, you may go to the best gym, you might go to the best trainers, you might learn all the right stuff, but if you don't do the work yourself, like do the work, it's never ever going to happen. So anyway, So I think that's very important, and I'm glad you brought that up. But we saw with Frank, there were two different styles that we would use depending on how we wanted someone to respond. And what it came down to was anytime we needed somebody to click a link to go watch a video, literally his emails were headline something like, just made this video for you, or this is the single best thing. Like, he was very, very catchy with his headlines.
Oh yeah.
And it was like one line, image, link to click, and then one line below that with a link just right in the text that would say click here. He never had a paragraph that was longer than like 3 lines. He never had a sentence that was too, like, he never had an email that was more than 2 or 3 paragraphs, unless what he wanted you to do, unless he was specifically trying to get like highly qualified prospects. Because there's a difference, right? If you want highly qualified prospects, sometimes you purposefully make them jump through hoops.
Yes.
You're saying no to a bunch of people beforehand. So when we did stuff like for the boot camp, which is a $17,000 investment, we wrote a really, really, really long email that detailed everything we were going to do, and then it was just the people that responded. Now, luckily for him, he's operating at such a large scale that that still worked out, and we had plenty of profits from that. But most of the stuff that we sent was tiny little thing. In fact, even before I started working with Frank, when I was even with 6th Division and plus this, that was one thing that I noticed. All the successful businesses, they would never have more than like a paragraph in an email was never wider than you could, like, it had to be narrow enough to where you could read it comfortably on your iPhone, like on a small screen. It was never more than, a paragraph was never more than 3.5, 4 lines on your iPhone. It was never more than 2 or 3 paragraphs. Like literally you should be able to get the whole gist of the entire email in one glance.
Let me ask you this though, the width part. I was going to bring that up because Frank does this, and I immediately delete the emails as soon as I see them because I know what they are. The ones that have, 4 words and then, hard wrap, hard return. I'm in the camp at this point where I think we don't need to do that anymore. I'd love to hear reasons why I'm wrong.
Okay, so the only reason that you're wrong is because, and this is not in all cases, but the only reason that you're wrong is that more and more people are not telling the difference between the 2 types of emails because they're not accessing their email on a browser,
right,
or on a computer. So when you open it up on your phone, as long as the spacing is right, you can't tell the difference. Although I think with Infusionsoft and some of the email builders, like, you don't have to worry about wrapping. Like, it'll wrap, like the way it sends, the phone will wrap it itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's been working pretty well for years.
Hard code the width.
So say that again. Sorry, I was talking over top of you.
The old email builder in Infusionsoft hard coded the width.
That's
right.
That's right.
Which is why it would show up really tiny on your phone. But I think the new one is responsive. So as long as it's responsive, like, that's the key. Because you just need, like, when you want, here's what it comes down to. When you send your emails, you have to know that the person that receives the email is not sitting waiting for you to email them. Right? They got 100 other emails, and all 100 of those emails got put in their updates or promotions category in Gmail. Just assume that everybody uses Gmail because it's easier that way.
Right.
Assume everybody uses Gmail. Your email is going in, and it's being put in a list of 1,000 other promotions or updates that are going, because it's not going to their main folder, their main inbox, and they're never going to do that, right? So that's one thing that's happening. Plus, they're only checking their email, only actually looking at email like once a day, twice a day, maybe, because people aren't checking email the same way that they used to. That's why you talk about text messages. That's why you talk about phone calls, because it's about disrupting the pattern without trying to like disrupting the pattern without what am I trying to say?
Without breaking their pattern, without getting in their way.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you have to know and understand your email is one of 1,000. So the only way that your email is going to stand out is if they, number one, can click on it because the headline is good, and two, if they're trained to know that your emails are easy to read and they're quick and it's good content and it's just like boom, 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 done, like it. So I think that's I think that's very important about chunking. The other awesome side benefit is that most of the time we put enough work into our emails to where, like, we put a ton of thought and work into these emails and these videos and stuff, and we could use that work over 10 emails instead of just in one. You know what I mean? Like, we'll put all this work into one email. We'll spend like a day writing an email, and that email could actually be chunked down into 10 emails.
Yeah. So the pushback I get a lot of times, with clients that talk about the chunking delivery, different types of delivery, is like, well, we don't have mobile phone. We don't have permission to message them. We don't have, we don't have this. We don't have their address. We don't have a phone number. All we have is an email address. Like that, you can change that.
Yeah, ask for it.
Ask for it, and especially in those that give it to you, guess what? They want to hear from you.
Yeah. Anytime anybody gives you a phone number, they won't give it to you if they don't want you to call them.
Yeah. Or
they'll put in a fake number. I do that.
Oh yeah,
if I don't want somebody to call me,
exactly.
I'll put in a fake number. But if I put my real number in, I don't care if you call me. You could literally call me the next minute.
Yeah. I had a guy, I used to give my phone number, so my last 4 digits of my phone number, 8822. And so I would do if I didn't want to deal with it and I had to put a phone number 8823. I get a call one day from 8823. And somehow this guy had, I was like, I just figured it's a dead number, chances are. No, it wasn't. It's a guy that lives around here, and he was pissed. He's like, I got a call for all these marketing things, and I think it's you that causes this.
That's when you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I think I just mixed it up. I just put the wrong number.
No, I told him exactly what and why, and I said, I'll stop doing it. I apologize.
That's amazing.
I was completely honest with the guy, and he lives up in Logan, and
oh yeah,
because it's a Google Voice number, so you can,
oh yeah. Okay.
So I just picked that number and talked for a few minutes, cool. And he's like, I'll leave it alone.
Yeah. That's amazing. Right. All right. So we got 10 minutes left, so we gotta power through. So what was your other thing?
I'll save my other part till next time and let you continue.
Chunking. Check that out. In real time, John just chunked down his content. Did you guys see that happen? He was like, I got extra stuff, but I don't have to say it right now. I'll just say it next week. That's perfect. Okay. So a couple of things that I want to talk about. I think the first one, so some of you may know, actually none of you probably know, but I'm training for another fight beginning of November. And a lot of I get a lot of insight into the business, into the world, into life, just by paying attention to my body, paying attention to my mind, paying attention to what's happening while I'm training, after I'm training, before I'm training, all that kind of stuff. And last night I had a very, very interesting experience. And it brought up I have a new sort of outlook on life, a new sort of mantra or motto, which is you need to die every day before you go to bed. And what I mean by that is I got home last night and I had a particularly intense day of training. And a lot of times after you have an intense day of physical exertion, a lot of times the phrase we'll use is, oh man, I'm so dead. Like I just feel dead right now. And I thought to myself, yeah, I think that's actually the point. I think the point of training, the point of pushing yourself, the point of improvement is that the you that existed at the beginning of that day has to die before the end of that day in order for you to improve. Because as long as the you that exists right now survives into tomorrow, you can't improve. You can't improve in life. You can't improve in relationships. You can't improve in business. And so I think you have to live every day. When it comes to training in martial arts, it's actually really easy to see the correlation, because the you that showed up the day before has to give so much in order to improve that you're killing your body. Oracle thing. You're literally breaking your body so that it can repair itself that night. So you wake up the next morning an entirely new person. And the more you actually kill yourself and then rest and recover, you get up the next morning. That's when the rapid growth and rapid acceleration and what you're able to do happens. And I think the correlation between that and life, and especially business, is huge. I was thinking about it last night. And I think the more days go by where you don't just give everything and just destroy and go to bed as exhausted as you possibly, like you literally couldn't do another thing, and you kill yourself, and then you wake up the next morning a totally new person. Those are going to be the moments where you're going to, number one, achieve the most innovation in your business, because you're going to be burning through so many ideas and executing and really, really working. I think that's what working actually is. But also you're going to accelerate what you're able to get done, because you're putting so much into your business that there's nothing more to put into your business that day. And so I think it's important, as you're, whatever it is that you're doing, if it's fitness, if it's business, if it's life, it's relationships, like live every day as if it's your last, meaning let the you that woke up this morning die before you go to bed, so that tomorrow a totally new person can wake up and just pick up from where the person left off. Because I think that's the improvement. That's how you get better, is by the person that was here no longer existing, and the next day you're up at this level, and you move, and then you're up at this level. And it's about consistency, and it's about, was I talking with you about not breaking the chain? Were we talking about that last year or last week? Could have been last year.
When you kill yourself every day, it feels like
I think that's very, very important. I think that's very important, is you just do it. You don't make excuses. You don't don't say I'm tired. You don't do this. You don't do that. It's like if you last night, in fact, while I was training, I thought to myself, every round that I was doing, because all the stuff I was doing was on a round timer. So it's 3 minutes and then a minute rest. And I kept thinking to myself every round, this is your last round ever. It's the last round you're ever going to do. How are you going to show up, no matter how tired you are? How are you going to show up if it's the last round you're ever going to do? Or even better, this is the last round of your fight. And it's tied 1-1 for the rounds. So if you don't give everything in this round, you lose. And that I think is how we need to show up in everything in life, is think, I don't have, this is kind of an interesting point, because I talk a lot about, you do have time. So you don't have to try and, like, when I talk about weight loss, I talk about, like, don't try and lose all your weight today and tomorrow and in 12 weeks, like, lose weight over time. So I think there's some differences in the sort of the theory, but the idea is, if you show up as though you don't have time, understanding that you do have, and then just don't get frustrated if you don't get the results you want as immediately as you think. Show up as though this is the last time. This is it. This is the end of what you're going to be doing. Because for me, that's incredible motivation to step up my game and realize that if this is the last one, I'm going to give everything. It's like the last like half mile of a 5K. I'm almost sprinting the whole thing, because it's like, this is the end. This is the end piece. This is what I built for. So I think that's very important as you're moving through building a business, just in life in general. Live every day, live every moment like this, like it's the pinnacle, like it's the peak of your training of what you've been building for. And then I think what'll happen is, for the first little bit, you'll just be exhausted all the time. But then at some point, your mind and your body will click in, and you'll start performing at a peak, like a professional level. Instead of just sort of trying at it, you'll start performing at like elite status, because you're treating it with elite status. You're treating yourself and what you're trying to do as though you're at the elite status.
I like it.
So I think that's really important. Do you have any thoughts?
I think, yeah. And whatever it is you're doing, you got to feed it. You know, if you're working out, training for a fight, you've got to exercise, you got to train. If you're doing marketing, you better be reading books every day. And I fall prey to that. You know, I was looking at a chart the other day that said, here's, you know, the successful people do this, and non-successful people do this. You know, non-successful people TV, successful people books. I do fall into this camp much more than I want to.
Yeah.
And it's just my wife loves sitting in bed watching TV when she's worked a hard day, and I end up doing that with her, and I need to be better at that. It's but yeah, figure out what that food is that's going to feed what it is you're trying to achieve.
Yep.
And make sure that's in balance too.
That's why I got back into these.
Yeah.
Because this stuff is current, and it's some of this stuff can be kind of like TV, and you can get caught up in like the dumb stuff, but there's some really cool stuff in here. And it starts to train your brain to think in that same innovative sense as what other people are doing.
The other magazine I'd add to that would be Wired. I've always enjoyed Wired magazine.
I am on Wired, actually. I need to make
That's usually like in there with that group of, you know.
Yeah.
Fast Company, Inc., Wired. Yeah. And so I have subscribed to all of those from time to time, and I'm not subscribed to any of them at the moment, but whenever I'm in the airport, it's my go-tos right there.
Yep.
Grab those and read them on the plane.
Well, and it's funny you talk about reading books too, because sitting right behind me, right over there, is in fact, I'll just show you guys. Sitting right back over there is my bookshelf, and I have all of those are business books. Well, not the top shelf, but everything down below. It's all like, I got Tony Robbins' book there. I got Simon Sinek, 2 of Simon Sinek's books. I've got 3 Seth Godin books. I've got Made to Stick that I started like 4 times and haven't finished.
I love that book. I met both the authors of that, Made to Stick.
Oh yeah, they're brothers, right?
Yeah. Cool guys.
Yeah, and what I read was awesome. Like I love the book. I love what I've seen so far. I just haven't finished it. I haven't had the discipline.
It's a neat book, and you don't have to read the whole thing to get a lot out of it either. You can get a lot out of it just by. Yeah,
I got a ton out of it from like the first 2 chapters.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's been around for a bit. I met those guys in San Fran, 2009, I think.
Yeah.
And then again, I think in Richmond, I met one of the brothers at a marketing thing. I don't remember what group that was, but they got a good story to tell. That was their second book that was coming out, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's important. And who was it that I was reading? Oh, there's this other book. It's called The War of Art. Have I told you about this?
No.
Okay, The War of Art. I forget who it's by. I'm going to look it up real quick because this is a great parting note for the last couple of minutes because I think it speaks directly to a lot of what we've been talking about. The War of Art. It's written by the guy who wrote the book Legend of Bagger Vance.
Okay.
They made it into a movie.
Yeah.
Stephen Pressfield is the guy who wrote it. But it's basically about any person who has like his general premise is that everybody has like a calling. Everybody has something that they're supposed to do on this earth. At times he gets a little bit hippy dippy, but he's an artist, so you kind of give him a pass. He talks about you have to. There's a whole section in there where he talks about mastering your craft, because he says, in order for you to be able to capture inspiration when it comes, you have to have the tools mastered, so that when innovation comes, you have some structure in which you can put it. So, like, I think of two things I like to think of. Number one, well, actually, three things. Three things I like to think of. First of all, always it comes back to fighting for me. If you have the basics and the technique down, and you've worked the technique, then when you find openings in a match or in a fight, you're able to execute on those things, and you might be putting combinations together in a different sequence than somebody is used to, but it's just the basics, right? The reason why you're able to do that is because you mastered the basics. The second thing I like to think about is jazz music. So jazz music is all based on breaking existing rules of harmony and syncopation and like beat and all that kind of stuff. Like jazz is basically take something like classical music, something that's very structured and very organized, take all the rules that you learn in that type of music and then break them. And that's how jazz music works.
Put them in a blender
and see what comes out. But you can tell the difference between a terrible amateur jazz musician and a truly professional one, and it's in their technique. Because like an amateur, it's like you can tell the difference between Jackson Pollock and someone trying to imitate Jackson Pollock. Jackson Pollock is not a terrible, like, he can paint, and he mastered the craft, but he just had a different set of inspiration. Then my last one is, and it's another music reference, but everything goes back to fighting and music for me, is Beethoven. Because Beethoven is the classic example of this, because he took everything from the classical era of music, which was like Bach and Mozart, like very like very very clean and crisp and perfect thirds and like no weirdness, and he broke all those rules.
Right.
Like, that's one of the things I love about listening to Beethoven is he's the transition between the classical and the Baroque era and then the next era of music, because he basically took all those rules and broke them. So I think the idea there is make sure that you have the technique mastered so that when that innovation comes, when you have inspiration, you can move forward. And I think that speaks to your thing about feeding it, making sure that you're fueling whatever it is that you're going to try and do. Because it's the same thing. If I try and go train and fight and I don't eat, then I will literally die.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, very good.
All right, so we're 1 minute over. Do you have any party thoughts?
I'm good. If we're a minute over, then I definitely don't.
Okay, perfect. All right, everybody. It's been awesome. This has been a good 30 minutes. These things fly when we only do them 30 minutes. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that it's so
good.
quick. It's good. I think we should have Ross back next week. I'm not sure about that, but we'll find out.
I think so.
And check everybody out. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Just remember, chunk your delivery and live each day like it's your last. We'll see y'all next week. Peace out.